Hey guys, welcome to Matt Does Stuff. This week's stuff is I'm going to be building a router table. So for those of you who've watched all of my videos that I've done, you'll remember a couple of weeks back I made some crib boards, and in that I was using my handheld router with the crib board clamped to the workbench. It takes a bit longer and is a little bit less safe, I guess, doing it that way. So what I've built is a router table, specifically this guy. So that uses my the Katsu Router I told you about previously. So that's the little handheld one I've used in previous projects. And yeah, so that's a nice little router, benchtop router table, which will make my life much easier and safer. But as always, before we get into that, let's pop over to the kitchen where I'm smoking some chili today. Hey guys, welcome to the kitchen. Today I'm going to be smoking a chili for you. So the meat I'm going to be using is this, which is some beef chuck. This I think comes from the sort of lower front of the cow, usually cooked low and slow or smoked like a brisket, or diced used in casseroles and stews, or in my case a chili. So that's the meat I'm going to use. I've also got some chilies to go in there. I've got some Kashmiri chilies, which I think are quite mild. I hope they're quite mild, because I'll be using quite a lot of them. Some bird's eye chilies in there to give me a bit of heat, and to make sure it really warms me up until next Christmas, I've got a couple of Scotch bonnets. I might use one, I might use two, depends how adventurous I'm feeling later. But obviously I can't prepare the chili here, so in a Matt Does Stuff first, let's pop over to the hob. Ready for the smoker. I'm going to add some kidney beans and some black-eyed beans to this later on, along with some red pepper, but I don't want those to go mushy, so that's why I'm not adding them now. So I'm going to get this on the fire, and we'll see this later. So I'm going to be making the router table out of all 18mm plywood today. So I've got a quarter sheet here. So this is 600 by 1200mm sheet. I've only got a small workshop. I'm not going to be making a massive router table, so it's all going to come from this one sheet. I'm also going to be using a bit of Perspex in the top, but I'll show you that later. And I've also bought a fancy raising mechanism that I bought on Amazon. So again, when I get to that, I'll show you it. But for now, I need to chop this up into the pieces that I want. So I've got the bit of plywood marked out, so I'm in my workshop still. I've just got it clamped down to the bench. I've got it marked out here. I've got 500 by half the width of the board, which is actually 305. And I've got this clamp as a guide, offset the distance of my my saw, so you can see there I've got the overhang, like the distance from the blade to the guide here. So I've got that distance is where I've set my my guard, and I'm just going to whiz that through, and we'll have some one of the cuts done. So I'm just going to repeat that for all the other cuts, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what I've ended up with. So this is the basic setup of the router table. I've got a 300 by 500 at the top and bottom, and then at the two sides I've got 300 squares. I'm going to put some pocket holes along the insides of these, top and bottom, so I can connect it. But before I do that, I'm just going to prepare the top so that I can mount the router to the table. So once again, the router that I'm using is my trusty Katsu, but this time I'm using the, I'll be using the plunge base. So this is the plunge base, plunges up and down, or usually in that direction. I'm going to mount it up that way, under my table, and then use this plunge base to allow me to set the height on the blade. To mount the plunge router base into the top, I'm going to be using a bit of Perspex. So I'm going to remove the plastic base off of the plunge router. I'm going to be transferring the holes into a section of this Perspex. This Perspex is just a 5mm sheet that I got off Amazon. It's about the size of a A4 piece of paper, and I think you'd use it for like picture fronts or something like that, but I'm going to use it for my router table. And then I'm going to mount that Perspex into a recessed hole into the router table top. So I'll just use the router to trim out a slot for the Perspex to go in. Transferring over the holes, drilling them using my brad point drill, and then putting a few countersinks in, and then marking the centre, and I used a Forstner bit to drill out the hole, and I'd also taken it to the table saw to trim it down. So this little setup is going to allow me to route out 5mm recess in the top of the board, which will allow me to set the Perspex in. So what I've done is just mark around the edge of the Perspex, and then I've set this up as a guide all the way around, so that when my router hits the edges, the blade will only be cutting the edge of the where I want it to, essentially. So I'm going to... So I'd already been around a couple of times before I turned the camera on, but essentially I've taken as much as I want to with the router, and I just chiseled out the corners, and now I'm using a Forstner bit just to drill some holes at the sort of edges of where I'm going to cut out with the jigsaw. So the Perspex is now recessed into the top, but I have got a little lip of around 0.5mm. I know that because this is a 0.5mm window shim. So I'm either going to have to use that or modify that in order to go around the lip, or maybe use a couple of these washers just to shim it up so that it is level with the top. Otherwise when I try and slide a bit of wood across it, it'll catch on the lip. So that'll be fine when I put that together. Just drilling some pocket holes here in the side pieces so I can attach top and bottom, and then just screwing those, gluing and screwing those together. So I've put the bottom on. I didn't use the pocket holes in the bottom because I couldn't get the drilling because it's not high enough. So instead I've just glued and screwed it with countersink and some screws through the bottom, just as good anyway. So I've got the router in the table, and at the moment it's just hanging off the bottom. You can see that it's because it is a plunge base. Normally I'd be applying pressure from the top downwards in order to reach the height. But in this case, to set the cutter height, I'm going to have to push upwards. I think that's probably a bit difficult in this orientation. So what I've bought is this, which is 15 quid on Amazon. It's noted as it's just a scissor lift, which is noted for, like, well, they sell it as like for scientists, for like aligning lasers and things like that. Not sure how many people actually use it for that job. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But what I'm going to use it for is to raise and lower my blade in the router. So that's going to sit under the router, and then it's got about a 6 kilo lift. So I'm hoping that as I turn it, you can see there, the blade moves up and down, and that'll give me a nice accurate blade height setting without having to worry too much about it. So I've put the hold down pieces on. I just notched these out on the table saw just to clamp that down properly. That is essentially it finished. Well, good enough to do like roundovers and things like that. But I think in the future I'll probably put in some TTrack and get a fence on the go, so I can get a bit more creative with the router table. Okay, so having installed the router top, or the router into the table, sorry, I now need to build a fence for it. I'm going to be, in order to make the fence adjustable, I'm going to be recessing some TTrack into the fence so that I can adjust it. That'll go in from the back of the table to about halfway up on both sides, and then I'll just make a plywood fence to go along the back. So I'm using my other router here to cut out the T-slots, using the edge guide just to make sure I'm all aligned, and just a straight cutter. I've taken a few passes, again, I like to try and avoid breakout. And here I'm just using some 2-part epoxy. I think this is Gorilla Glue 2-part epoxy to stick the T-track in, because well, so that's the T-track installed. Now just time to make a fence. So I've made the fence for it. Completely forgot to turn the camera on while I was doing it. But essentially it is just 2 pieces of plywood off the same board as I made the rest of it. I've got a 70mm high fence here with a little mouse hole for the cutter. And then mounted on the back, I've got another 70mm piece of 18mm plywood, and I've drilled some holes in it for these guys, which are just TTrack runners, and that means I can move the fence, if I undo it properly, means I can move the fence up and down where I want to suit the what I'm using the router table for. So that is essentially router table complete. What I'm going to do is just give everything a quick sand up and apply some furniture polish just to the top surfaces and the bottom of this one, just to make it all slide a bit better. So just to prove that it does work, I'm just going to put a round over on this scrap of MDF. go, I've put a little round over on there, and if I want more of a round over, I just raise the blade using my using the scissor lift. There we go, I've got a big round over on it. So, really pleased with the way that's turned out. The lift mechanism under here, you can see blade going down now. I can stow that in a downward position. Really pleased with the way that turned out. Okay, chili's on the smoker. I've got some hickory chunks in the bowl. That's going to stay on there for a couple of hours, and then I'll come back in a bit and put the beans in. So it's been about an hour and 40 minutes, so I'm just going to go in with the beans and the red peppers. So I'm going to finish stirring those, pop the lid back on, give those another 20 minutes. Hey guys, end of the day here on Matt Does Stuff. Today I have made a router table out in the shed, and while I was doing that, I was smoking this, which is just some smoked beef chuck chili. So let's get in there and see what this tastes like. Oh, that is delicious. I can taste the hickory smoke on there. I put quite a big chunk on. That's fiery hot from the chilies I put in there as well. God, yeah, I'm going to enjoy that. So I'm going to load up my bowl. I've got some sour cream, some coriander and some cheese to go on top. Yeah, I'm going to get that loaded. So that's my chilli loaded up with all the toppings. I have, of course, got a beer. Couldn't be any beer, but tonight I've got a Arbor Mosaic. So let's see what that tastes like. Oh yeah, that'll knock the edge off this chilli. Right, I'm going to get amongst this, and remember, you stay safe, and remember to get some stuff done.